Imagine this for a second. You are out in the wild.
Yeah.
You went for a quick day hike, but somehow you got completely turned around.
Oh, that is the classic nightmare scenario.
Right. And your phone is just totally dead. Your bag is gone. The nearest town is maybe 40 miles away, and the sun is dropping really fast behind the tree line. And to make matters worse, you have a deep bleeding gash on your arm from a bad fall.
Yeah, for most people, that exact scenario triggers pure paralyzing panic. I mean, the environment suddenly feels incredibly hostile. The forest isn't just pretty scenery anymore. It feels like a trap.
Exactly. We tend to view our reality as, well, binary. You know, you're either safe inside civilization or you are in active danger out in the wild. But welcome to this deep dive, by the way.
Yeah.
Today we have our hands on a really fascinating documentary script that details 20 forgotten survival plants.
It is a phenomenal source.
It really is.
Yeah.
And our mission for this deep dive is to completely rewire how you see the natural world around you. We want to take that green scenery or even those annoying weeds you pull out of your driveway and reveal them for what they actually are, which is a hidden, ancient toolkit of food, medicine, and survival gear.
Absolutely. And I think we should establish right up front that this kind of survival knowledge, it isn't about doomsday prepping.
Right.
It is not about fear or stockpiling bunkers or anything like that. It is fundamentally about freedom. It's about capability. When you learn to read the landscape, you are reconnecting with the ancient, hard-won knowledge that literally kept our ancestors alive for millennia.
So true. And real quick, before we get into it, we really want this information to reach as many people as possible. So if you enjoy this kind of calm, practical deep dive, please take a second to subscribe to the channel and share this video with anyone you know who loves the outdoors. It really helps us out.
It definitely does.
Okay, let's unpack this by starting right outside your front door. Before we even venture into the deep wilderness to fix that imaginary bleeding arm, let's talk about the plants you probably walked right past this morning. The weeds hiding in plain sight.
Yeah, the sidewalk pharmacy.
Exactly. Starting with the most famous lawn enemy of all time, the dandelion.
Oh, man. It really is tragic what modern landscaping has done to the dandelion. We spend, millions of dollars every year spraying chemical poisons on our lawns to eradicate a plant that is, biologically speaking, a total superfood.
A superfood.
Oh, yeah. Every single part of the dandelion is edible. The leaves actually have more iron than spinach.
See, I was completely shocked to read in the script that dandelion roots can actually detoxify the liver.
Yeah.
Like, how does a weed that grows in a literal parking lot manage to do that? What is the actual mechanism there?
Well, it comes down to the bitter compounds in the taproot. When you consume the root, which is often roasted as a coffee substitute, by the way, those bitter properties actively stimulate your liver to produce more bile.
And bile is what breaks things down.
Exactly. Bile is the fluid your body uses to break down fats and carry away waste. So by eating the root, you are physically kickstarting your body's internal flushing mechanism to clear out toxins.
That is wild. Next on the documentaries list is broadleaf plantain. Now, just to be clear for anyone listening, we are not talking about the banana-like fruit you fry up.
Right, no bananas here.
Right. We are talking about the low-growing weed with wide, oval-shaped leaves and thick, rubbery ribs running down the back. It grows in sidewalk cracks and on heavily trampled hiking trails.
Yeah, it actually prefers compacted soil, which is why it's always right under your boots.
I love the analogy the script uses for this one. Broadleaf plantain is basically nature's Band-Aid. It notes that if you get a cut, a blister, or a bee sting, you can chew up a leaf and put it on the wound. But why do you have to chew it? Why not just rub the leaf directly on your skin?
That is a great question. It is because plants have really rigid cellulose cell walls. Your skin just can't break those down on its own.
Oh, so you have to crush it.
Exactly. By chewing the leaf, your teeth crush the cellulose, and the enzymes in your saliva mix with the plant's juices to create what's called a poultice. This releases a chemical compound in the plant called aucubin.
Aucubin.
Right. And aucubin is a powerful anti-inflammatory and antibacterial agent. When you press that wet, chewed-up leaf mash directly onto a bee sting, the aucubin physically draws out the venom. It constricts the blood vessels slightly and just rapidly drops the swelling.
It is an entire first aid kit in a single leaf. That is amazing. And moving further down the driveway, we find Purslane. It's a low, creeping plant. It has these thick, fleshy, kind of succulent-like leaves and reddish stems, and it actually thrives in baking hot, cracked pavement.
which really tells you a lot about its internal chemistry. I mean, plants that survive extreme heat and drought conditions, they have to adapt. And Purslane's adaptation makes it an absolute nutritional powerhouse.
It's basically a fish oil supplement growing in a sidewalk crack. Source says it holds one of the highest concentrations of omega-3 fatty acids of any plant on Earth. But if you're listening to this and thinking about grazing in your driveway, we do need a major safety check here, right?
Yes. This is a critical rule of foraging. Purslane has a toxic lookalike called spurge. To the untrained eye, they look very similar. They both grow low to the ground in cracks. But if you break the stem of Purslane, the juice is clear and watery.
Okay, clear is good.
Right. But if you break the stem of spurge, it leaks this milky white sap. That sap is essentially a toxic latex that will severely irritate your skin and your stomach. So the rule is simple. If you see white sap, do not eat it.
Good to know. White sap is a no-go. And rounding out our sidewalk pharmacy is clover. Both the red and white varieties with the little spherical flower heads. You can eat the flowers raw, which are surprisingly sweet, or even grind the tiny seeds into a protein flour. But the red clover specifically contains something called isoflavones. What exactly are those?
Isoflavones are a type of phytoestrogen, meaning plant-based estrogen. In the human body, they can gently mimic our own hormones. Historically, women have used red clover tea to help balance hormone levels and manage symptoms of menopause.
That is incredibly practical.
It is. Plus, ecologically speaking, clover is a natural indicator. If you see a dense patch of clover, you know the soil is fixing nitrogen, and you know honeybees are nearby. If we connect this to the bigger picture, modern society has taken these absolute chemical and nutritional marvels and categorized them as nuisances.
Right, we just spray them with weed killer.
Exactly. We pave over them, we poison them, and in doing so, we've totally severed our connection to local, free, incredibly dense nutrition.
It really shifts your perspective. We traded actual botanical sovereignty for a perfectly manicured lawn. But let's move from these passive, harmless backyard weeds to the plants that actively seem like they want to hurt you. Because there's a whole category of wild medicine that looks totally hostile. Take stinging nettle.
Oh, just hearing the name makes people itch. Nettle plants are covered in these microscopic needle-like hairs. When you brush against them, the tips of those hairs snap off and inject an irritating chemical cocktail directly into your skin.
Okay, so here's my pushback. If stinging nettle hurts you on contact, and I mean, it really burns, how on earth did our ancestors figure out that it was useful? Who was the first person to look at a plant that causes intense pain and think, well, let's try boiling that and making a soup?
It's a brilliant question, and it speaks to the paradox of wild medicine. Often, the plants with the strongest, most aggressive chemical defenses contain the most potent medicinal compounds. Those hairs in the nettle are actually made of silica.
Like glass.
Exactly. Basically fragile, tiny glass needles. And the venom they inject contains formic acid, which is the exact same chemical that makes ant bites burn so badly.
So how do you eat glass needles full of ant venom? That sounds like a terrible idea.
Well, you apply heat. Our ancestors likely discovered through desperate trial and error that boiling the plant for just 60 seconds shatters the fragile silica hairs and completely denatures or destroys the formic acid.
And what you're left with is basically a supercharged spinach.
Yeah.
It's packed with protein, iron, and anti-inflammatory properties. People historically drank nettle tea to cure joint pain and arthritis.
Oh, and the documentary mentions the tall, fibrous stalks can be stripped and twisted to weave incredibly strong rope.
Yeah, nettle cordage is surprisingly strong. Speaking of hostile environments in ancient history, let's look at yarrow. It's a feathery, fern-like plant that produces flat clusters of tiny white flowers. Its Latin name is Achilleum millefolium.
Wait, named after Achilles? Like from the Greek myth of the Trojan War?
Exactly the one. Legend has it that the centaur Chiron taught Achilles to use yarrow to treat his soldiers' bleeding wounds on the battlefield, and modern chemistry actually backs up the ancient myth. Yarrow contains an alkaloid called achillene. Which does what, exactly? If you're out in the wild with a deep cut, like that scenario we opened the video with, how does a feathery little flower help you?
Achillene is a powerful coagulant. When you crush yarrow leaves and press them deeply into a bleeding wound, that chemical physically interacts with the proteins in your blood to accelerate the fibrin clotting cascade.
Meaning it stops the bleeding.
Exactly. It speeds up the body's natural ability to plug the hole. Beyond that, if you brew it into a hot tea, it acts as an antipyretic. It dilates your blood vessels and induces heavy sweating, which is exactly what your body needs to break a dangerous high fever.
That is incredible. From the battlefield to the chest cold, you also have wild mustard. It comes up early in the spring, featuring bright yellow flowers and a really sharp, peppery smell. The leaves give you a huge hit of vitamin C and K, but the mechanism for medicine here is interesting. Historically, people would crush the leaves into a poultice and apply it to their chest to break up deep respiratory congestion.
Right, because wild mustard contains glucosinolates, which are the same sulfur compounds that make horseradish burn your nose. When applied to the skin, those compounds act as a rubefacient.
A rubefacient.
Yeah, meaning they draw warm blood to the surface of the skin. That increases circulation to the chest area and helps loosen up that deep, stuck mucus.
We can't forget chickweed in this category either. It's delicate, it likes cool weather, and it was historically eaten by sailors to cure scurvy because it is absolutely loaded with vitamin C. But externally, it contains compounds called saponins, which act like a natural soap. You can mash the plant up to cool and soothe minor burns or eczema.
It's amazing that these plants function as both a pharmacy and a salad bar. But let's be real about the listener's survival scenario. A wild salad is great for a day or two. But if you are truly lost, or if society has taken a major hit, medicine and greens aren't going to keep you alive for a month. Your body is going to demand heavy, sustaining calories.
Right. You need carbohydrates, dense fats, and proteins. You need the caloric heavyweights. And according to the script, the absolute king of wild calories is the acorn. Found anywhere oak trees grow, they're basically dense little fat and carb bombs. But if you're listening to this, you're probably thinking, wait, I've bitten into an acorn as a kid. It tastes terrible and makes your stomach churn.
Yeah, that's because raw acorns are packed with tannic acid, or tannins. Tannins are an evolutionary defense mechanism. The oak tree packs the acorn with bitter acid so that squirrels won't eat them immediately, giving the seed time to mature and eventually grow into a new tree.
And the script says to make them edible, you have to shell them, smash them into pieces, soak them in water, and constantly pour off and replace that water over the course of 24 hours to leach the tannins out. So here is my practical pushback. Is it really worth that massive effort? Why spend a whole day washing nuts when you could just walk around picking wild berries?
Well, this raises an important question about the stark difference between casual foraging and long-term survival. Berries are fantastic, but look at their composition. They are mostly water and a little bit of fructose sugar. You digest them in an hour, and the energy burns off quickly. If you need to survive a freezing winter, you simply cannot do it on berries alone.
The calories in versus calories out math just doesn't work.
Exactly. Tannins are highly water-soluble, so yes, leaching acorns takes time, but it uses water to wash away the bitter acid. What you are left with is a highly caloric, fat-dense flour. You process a massive batch over a few days, dry the flour, and you have sustaining food that will keep your brain and body functioning for months. It is an investment in your future survival.
That makes perfect sense. Another caloric heavyweight is amaranth. It's a tall plant with these really dramatic, dense, reddish seed heads, and it is a nutritional marvel.
It really is. Amaranth seeds contain all 9 essential amino acids.
Meaning the amino acids the human body cannot produce on its own, right? We have to get them from our diet.
Precisely. Having all 9 makes amaranth the complete protein, which is exceedingly rare in the plant kingdom. It was so sustaining and vital to the Aztec Empire that when the Spanish colonizers arrived in the Americas, they didn't just fight the armies. They deliberately banned the cultivation of amaranth. They knew that to weaken the population and enforce control, they had to destroy the culture's most powerful, sustaining food source.
Wow. Food as a literal mechanism of control. Let's shift to something a bit more familiar to anyone who has walked through a dry field burdock. This is the plant that produces those super annoying brown, prickly burrs that latch onto your pants and your dog's fur.
Oh yeah, those burrs are a seed dispersal mechanism. And fun fact, looking at how those tiny hooks grabbed onto dog fur under a microscope is actually what inspired a Swiss engineer to invent Velcro.
I love that.
Yeah.
But the survival treasure isn't the Velcro burrs, it's underground. Burdock produces a massive, deep taproot. It's sweet, it's starchy, and the script highlights that it contains a specific carbohydrate called inulin.
Inulin is fascinating. It's a prebiotic fiber. The human stomach actually can't digest it, so it travels down into your lower intestines where it ferments and acts as high-grade fertilizer for your healthy gut bacteria.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, in a survival situation where your diet suddenly changes and stress levels are through the roof, maintaining your gut flora is the only way to keep your digestion from completely shutting down.
Wrapping up the heavyweights, we have lamb's quarters, often called wild spinach. It grows everywhere. The leaves have this powdery, dusty white coating underneath. It actually contains more calcium than a glass of milk, and its seeds are a direct botanical relative of quinoa. It's the perfect bridge: food micronutrients in the leaves, macronutrients in the seeds.
Okay, so we've got our calories, our gut health, and our first aid sorted.
Right, but now we are deep in the wilderness. And here's where it gets really interesting, because some plants aren't just single-use items. They are entire self-contained survival systems. If the forest is a city, the cattail is the local hardware store, the grocery store, and the pharmacy, all combined into one single organism.
The cattail, which you find growing in dense stands and wetlands and marshes, is arguably the most versatile survival plant on the planet. For the grocery store aspect in the spring, the young green shoots are crisp and edible like asparagus. The thick roots buried in the mud are a massive source of starchy carbohydrates, and the yellow pollen on the top of the stalk can literally be shaken off into a bag and used as a high-protein flour.
And that's just the food. For the hardware store, later in the year, those iconic brown, hot dog-looking seed heads explode into a massive clad of fluffy white down. That fluff is a hygroscopic marvel. The fibers are so incredibly fine that they will catch even the smallest cool spark from a ferro rod and feed it oxygen instantly. It is the ultimate instant fire tender.
It lights up so fast.
Plus, the long, flat leaves can be woven together. Because they swell slightly when wet, a woven cattail mat makes a naturally waterproof roof for a survival shelter.
And we can't forget the pharmacy. Down at the base of the plant, nestled between the young leaves, is a sticky, clear mucilage gel. It functions similarly to aloe vera. It's a natural antiseptic and analgesic that you can apply directly to burns or cuts.
But beyond the physical uses, the documentary emphasizes what they call ecological pattern recognition.
Yes, this is crucial. When you learn these plants, you aren't just memorizing flashcards. You're learning the language of the landscape. Cattails are an obligate wetland species. They physically cannot grow without a permanent water source. So if you are lost and dehydrated and you spot a patch of cattails in the distance, you haven't just found food and fire tinder. You have instantly found life-saving water. The plant is a neon sign pointing you to resources.
Pattern recognition is huge. Let's look at the pine tree next, specifically the eastern white pine. You can safely identify it because its soft needles grow in little bundles or clusters of 5. One for each letter in the word WHITE. Those pine needles have 5 times the vitamin C of a freshly squeezed orange. You just chop them up and steep them in hot water for pine needle tea.
It doesn't stop at tea either. The inner bark, the pale, spongy cambium layer just under the rough outer bark, is where the tree transports its starches. It is entirely edible and high in carbohydrates. And then you have the pine resin, the sticky sap.
Right, the tree's own immune system.
Exactly. When the tree gets cut, it bleeds resin to physically trap insects and seal out fungal infections. In a survival situation, you are just borrowing the tree's immune system. You can melt that resin and smear it over a cut on your arm. As it cools and hardens, it creates an airtight, waterproof, antibacterial seal. Furthermore, because it's loaded with volatile terpenes, dried pine resin is highly flammable and burns hot, making it an amazing fire starter even in the pouring rain.
But we do need another critical safety check here. Not all pines are safe. The documentary clearly warns that the yew tree and the ponderosa pine contain toxic compounds that can cause severe harm. You have to know beyond a shadow of a doubt that you have an eastern white pine or a verified safe equivalent.
Misidentification in the wild is easily one of the greatest dangers, which brings us to wild garlic. It carpets woodland floors in the early spring with green, grass-like leaves.
And the absolute golden rule here is trust your nose over your eyes. If it looks exactly like wild garlic, but it doesn't smell sharply and unmistakably of garlic or onion when you crush a leaf, drop it immediately. It might be lily of the valley, which contains cardiac glycosides that can literally stop your heart. But if it is true wild garlic, it is a massive lifesaver.
Especially for your water supply. If you are lost, your biggest threat after exposure to the cold is often waterborne illness. Things like giardia or cryptosporidium from drinking unfiltered surface water out of desperation.
How does garlic help with that?
Wild garlic contains a sulfur compound called allicin. Allicin is a broad-spectrum antimicrobial. When you consume it, it actively punches holes in the cell walls of harmful pathogens in your digestive tract while leaving your larger gut cells intact. Eating wild garlic regularly acts as an internal antimicrobial shield, significantly improving your odds of fighting off sickness from questionable water.
And if you're struggling with hydration itself, there's wood sorrel. It's a low-growing plant with little green arrowhead or heart-shaped leaves. If you chew on it, you get this really sharp, sour lemon drop flavor. That flavor is caused by oxalic acid.
That intense sourness is highly functional. It causes your salivary glands to kick into overdrive, stimulating saliva production, which physically quenches the sensation of thirst when water is scarce. Plus, it's packed with vitamin C.
Though, as the script warns, you don't want to eat massive salad bowl quantities of sorrel every single day for months. High amounts of oxalic acid can bind with calcium in your body and form kidney stones. But eating a handful to wet your mouth while you're lost in the woods, incredibly refreshing and beneficial.
So we've been deep in the woods, but I think we need to pull the perspective back to the edges of civilization. Because survival isn't always about being lost on a solo hike. Sometimes survival is about what happens when modern infrastructure and global supply chains completely collapse.
History's apocalyptic apothecary. The wild plants that stepped in to save whole populations during major global wars.
What's fascinating here is that we tend to view history through the lens of generals, politicians, and massive battles. But wars are often survived by the civilian population through deep, localized botanical knowledge. When naval blockades cut off global trade, society falls back on the earth.
A perfect historical example is rose hips. If you look at a wild rose bush after the soft petals fall away in the autumn, it leaves behind this little hard red or orange fruit at the base of the stem. That is the rose hip, and it contains 20 times the vitamin C of a standard orange. During World War II, the British government realized they couldn't import citrus fruit because German U-boats were blocking the supply ships. The civilian population was facing a massive scurvy epidemic.
So the government mobilized the nation's children. They organized campaigns sending kids out all over the countryside into the hedgerows to harvest hundreds of tons of wild rose hips. The Ministry of Food processed them into a sweet rose hip syrup and distributed it nationwide. That single wild plant literally saved the immune systems of an entire generation of children.
It is a stunning example of societal resilience. We saw a very similar dynamic with chicory. It's that tall, slightly spindly weed with bright, cornflower blue flowers that you see growing along highways and roadsides.
The magic of chicory is in its massive taproot. During the American Civil War, when southern ports were blockaded, and again during World War II in Europe, real coffee beans became impossibly expensive or totally unavailable. People dug up chicory roots, chopped them up, roasted them over a fire, and brewed them in hot water.
It gives you a surprisingly rich, dark, bitter drink that feels like coffee. It's caffeine-free, so it doesn't give you the jolt. But remember that inulin we talked about with burdock? Chicory root is loaded with it. So this wartime coffee substitute was actually supporting their digestive health while providing psychological comfort and physical warmth when the world was falling apart.
And when we talk about wartime stress and keeping the immune system functional, we absolutely have to talk about elderberry. The elder tree produces these heavy, drooping clusters of dark purple berries. Modern science has definitively proven what traditional medicine always knew. Elderberry is a highly potent antiviral.
I read the mechanism on this, and it's brilliant. The compounds in elderberry physically bind to the tiny spikes on the outside of a virus particle, which prevents the virus from penetrating and infecting your healthy human cells. It has been shown in clinical trials to significantly reduce the severity and duration of the flu and respiratory infections.
It is a powerhouse, but it demands respect.
Right, because the documentary has a massive warning attached to elderberry. If you eat the berries raw or consume the leaves, stems, or bark, they contain cyanogenic glycosides.
Which means exactly what it sounds like. Inside the human gut, those compounds break down and release hydrogen cyanide gas. It will cause severe, violent vomiting and sickness. Plus, the elder plant shares environments with deadly lookalikes like pokeweed or water hemlock.
So if you are in a high-stakes survival situation or a societal collapse, how do you weigh the risk of poisoning yourself versus the reward of getting that antiviral medicine?
It comes down to absolute, non-negotiable botanical literacy. In survival, you never guess. You observe the opposite branching structure of the leaves, the specific bark texture, the umbrella-like flower pattern. You confirm beyond a shadow of a doubt it is elderberry. And then you follow the ancestral rule, you apply heat. Boiling the berries physically vaporizes and neutralizes those cyanogenic compounds, leaving you with a perfectly safe, powerfully medicinal syrup. The risk is managed entirely through knowledge. Without the knowledge, nature is a gamble. With the knowledge, it's a pharmacy.
Knowledge is the ultimate filter. And speaking of incredible historical resources, our last plant is the mulberry tree. They drop these incredibly juicy, deep purple berries that stain absolutely everything. Sidewalks, your hands, your shoes. Those dark pigments are anthocyanins, which are powerful antioxidants that protect your cells from damage.
But the berries are just a bonus. Historically, the broad green leaves of the white mulberry tree were the sole exclusive food source for silkworms. This single plant species literally drove the global economy of the Silk Road, shaping the rise and fall of entire empires over centuries.
From driving global empires to soothing a bee sting in your driveway with a chewed-up leaf, we are truly surrounded by a living, breathing safety net. We've covered a massive journey today, from dandelion roots flushing out your liver to cattail fluff starting fires in the rain. And the biggest takeaway here is that you don't need to be lost in the woods with a bleeding arm to start using this toolkit. You can start this weekend. Walk outside, look at the cracks in the pavement, look at the weeds at the edge of the park, and see if you can identify just one of these plants.
I want to leave you with this final thought to chew on. If our ancestors could walk through a local forest and clearly see a bustling grocery store, a fully stocked pharmacy, and a hardware store all around them, what else are we completely blind to in our modern, convenience-driven lives? How fragile is our absolute reliance on the fluorescent aisles of the supermarket? And what happens to our minds, our confidence, and our sense of security when we finally remember how to read the earth again?
It really makes you wonder. The next time the sun is dropping, the temperature's falling, and your phone is dead, you don't have to freeze or panic. The answer to your survival might just be growing right under your boots.